1, 2, 3.
1.
1, 2, 3.
Singing,
I wanna be a drill instructor.
I wanna be a drill instructor.
I wanna save all,
I have some
all of my
a little fun that I thought about. You asked about bearing edges. This is a Ludwig Tom, I think it's about a 1962, and this is about a 1947-48 Slingerland radio came. And they both, the bearing edges back then were just ugly. I mean, nothing like what DW is doing today. They're flat, they went all over the place. They were made to use calf heads on, and calf heads, you put them on wet and then they conform to whatever the bearing edge was. But these two particular toms, I happened to think about this, and I did a recording session with a particular band and drummer, and then later I did a tacked on a live performance, the same band, same drummer. And I realized that we'd used two different sets. We used the Ludwig set in the studio, and we used the Slingerland set on the live job. And I wanted to see how different I had tuned for that same band, same songs and everything, between the studio and live. And I was actually pretty amazed. I hadn't changed anything except take the drums back and put them in my storage. I went down there yesterday, picked them up, brought them up here, and I was totally shocked about how different. I got the same sound when things were mic'd up. So this is the tom that we used in the studio. Okay, they're both 13-inch toms. They both got the same heads on. This is the way I had to tune for the gig to get the same sound out in the audience. That much higher, just to make the drums project in a live situation. People, I haven't heard Pit. Let me see what they sound like out front, because it's hard to tell.
Are you ready?
I'm ready. Yeah, I mean, totally different. But mic'd up, it was exactly the same. So,
The one thing that amazes me is this is a 13-inch honor tom. It sounds like a 14.
and that's got a piece of moon gel on the bottom and moon gel on the top. It was an interesting thing when they called me to do the session. They said, "Oh, we want a 60s sound." So I said, fine, and I talked to,
Called the right guy for that.
I talked it over with the drummer, and we decided to bring the Ludwig kit. Of course, when I got there, and they said, "Yeah, 60s sound like Stax, like Memphis." Yeah, okay, great. If I would have known that, it wouldn't have been what I brought to the session, So we kind of had to Mickey Mouse it around to get the sound that they actually wanted on the thing. But we got it. Can I answer any questions for anybody?
I was noticing when you were tuning the bottom, you were going 3, 3, then you started going 2. Is that because you were feeling it?
I was feeling it.
Yeah.
And, and counting how many turns. That's one way you can do it. The best thing to do is just keep doing it over and over and over again. Got to understand that I've been doing it for a long time, and I've probably put together and tuned more drum sets than most people are ever going to see in their life. Don and I tried to figure it out one day, and it probably averages out to 2 drum sets a day over my career, which has been about 40 years. So, I mean, I'm just doing this constantly. And to learn to do it, That's all you do. There's no rocket science involved in it. If you can get the head on there even, so it sounds even on each lug, you can tune. You just have to keep practicing.
What about the tension between the top and the
I have a
bottom?
lot of questions, if you don't mind.
Again, the top, for me, is what feels right when you hit the drum. You get your tone with the bottom.
That's the thing I'm having. I've been, like you said, I've been playing for so long, and I came just for the tuning thing, but it's so hard with the difference between the tuning the top and the bottom. I usually leave the bottom a little loose, but I talked to you so many times, and you always, every time I ask you a question, you tell me something, and I came up with the snare and the bass drum issue because I'm having, that's my biggest thing, but it's always a tension.
Again, I think we've talked about it before on the bass drum. Does it feel good for you to hit it? The tone is controlled from the front.
But I didn't, it's funny for all these years, I didn't understand how the front had so much to do with the overall tone.
I can't emphasize how much the bottom head and the front head on the bass drum has to do with the sound, the tone of the drum.
Yeah, could you talk a little bit more, Al, about tuning of the bass drum? Because, a lot of times, especially in a live situation, you've got a mic hole in your front head, and that mic is beyond where the plane of the front hit. Could you talk a little bit more about how that
A
interaction
lot
works?
of times, on a live situation, you're at the mercy of the sound guy. It's unfortunately a fact of life. And most sound guys want that hole in the front of the kick drum. Me personally, I would rather not have the hole. I like the sound better without a port in the bass drum. But in live situations, usually the sound guys, it's just easier for them. Easier to control. But again, same thing with the bass drum, same things on anything else. The side that you hit, you want it to feel good when you hit it. And the tone is controlled from the opposite side. I know it's a weird concept, but I mean was drummed into me when I was a kid. Was top head for tension and bottom head for tone. It worked. Yeah, Paul.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about the difference in sound, single ply versus double ply heads, or the weight of the head itself?
Well, sure, we can do that. Single ply and double ply, the biggest difference between the two is going to be the attack that you're going to get from the drum. With a single ply head, you're going to get more attack and longer sustain because you're not having two plies fighting against each other. As good as we try to make them match together, they still are going to slow each other down. So you're not going to get as much sustain. But and with a single ply, a heavier single ply, you're going to get a fast attack and a long decay. With the double ply, you'll get the fast attack and it'll stop quicker. So it's
Lower tone too with the double ply.
double ply give you a warmer tone. And then looking at those different variations, heavier drum heads are going to give you a wetter sound. You're going to get. It's one of the amazing things actually. The snare drum head I have out. This thing being so heavy, you generally will lose some sensitivity.
I think I've got a snare drum going for this one.
You will lose sensitivity because there's just more plastic. It's not going to vibrate as freely. The one thing that amazed me with the Level 360 is that kind of cured some of those problems. This is a very heavy drum head and it's still pretty sensitive. Double ply heads, warmer, good attack, less sustain. Single ply heads, even a sharper attack, longer sustain.
What about coated versus uncoated?
Just like anything else, if you coat something, you're going to reduce vibration, but it's going to produce a warmer tone. It's going to kind of mellow it out a bit. Most of the reason people use coated heads is for brushes, but some people like it just because it warms up the tone. I use a coated EC2 on mine. I don't use brushes, but I like it because it's just a little bit, it has a little bit rounder tone. Yeah, this is that.
This is amazing to me, because if you feel this head, this is a heavyweight head. I recommend it to anybody that's a heavy hitter. Yet this thing is just sensitive. It's completely sensitive.
But then you get into, you know, we mess with a lot of different mylars. Certain mylars are going to be softer, so they're going to produce a more of a scooped tone, so they're more pliable. And then a more high tension mylar is going to be crispier, like that would be. We also do the hydraulic heads, where we put a layer of oil between the two plies, which really, you don't have to worry about tuning those, trust me.
Why are people going with dots?
Just
Reinforcement.
durability.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some people hitting out there that are just, they're monsters, you know, and it just won't break. We've got people using Kevlar on drum sets now. Kevlar snare drum heads.
Drum sets?
Yep, for a drum set, snare drum.
Oh, just snare drum?
Just a snare.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, still, really? Jackson to play the drums? Wow.
I've got a Gretsch kit that I got a few years ago, and for a long time I had trouble with the toms, getting a good sound out of them, because it was these ringing overtones. And eventually my solution was to put some rings on it, you know, the Evans ring. And then I also tried something I got from Charlie Watts. I noticed he puts these dot heads on the bottom, which I know is supposed to be batter heads, and usually use a thinner one. And I managed to get rid of the ringing overtones and sort of get a nice tone I want, but they're a little dead. What's your suggestion for dealing with such a?
Gretsch is another animal. Depending, is this a classic
No, it's
Gretsch kit?
Catalina birch.
Oh, it's Catalina birch. I've had great luck with single ply heads on top and a very thin resonant head.
But
In fact, that's the same thing I got on an old round badge set that
But if you do, have such a problem with ring, do you just
You
slap on the
shouldn't.
wound
A lot of
gels, or
times
what do you
that's
think
a-
of these rings?
That's a lot of times a tuning problem.
I see. Have you got a
Like I say,
dial
I
to-
don't usually put dampening on anything. The reason that it's on this drum is because we were in the studio and the sound that they wanted, there's a piece on the bottom and a piece on the top on that. And I think we probably had the same or more on the floor tom. But that was just because that's what they needed to get the sound that they wanted on the tunes. But normally I don't put any kind of muffling on, and
Sometimes that's just head selection too, you know?
Yeah.
It might be the type of head you have on
Yeah,
there.
tried a couple different.
Yeah.
And might try, what some people recommend for snare drums, is to not tune them so exactly in tune across.
that's
Because
another
then,
thing,
you'll
detuning
avoid
a
some of
lug
those-
on the snare drum.
yeah, those harmonics
Whoa.
being all the same,
Yeah,
and it'll blend better, and might cut
Yeah.
down some of them.
it's kind of funny that you should say that, because there's some guys that I work for that I'll get the drums tuned just right, and they'll walk up and do that. And in Don's case, I think it's habit with him, and also he just wants to show me that I really don't know what I'm doing. So Jimmy Keltner is the same way. No matter what I do, he's going to come up and tune one lug. Other guys, I was surprised. I changed heads on Stanton Moore's snare drum. Handed it to him, he hit it. Never laid a key on it, So I mean, if you're having a problem with the sympathetic vibrations for something, detuning a lug will a lot of times help that.
What do you recommend, if
one lug is off, and you just cannot fix it. And you try to basically pick a lug and tune to that lug, and you just cannot, everything is off. And you get into this terrible cycle of tightening and loosening. And you just recommend taking it off and starting over? Because what you did was amazingly fast relative to what I've
That's because I
been doing it for a while.
do it all the time. I mean, he was blown away the first time he saw me do that because it was so even all the way around. It's just from doing it over and over again. But if you do what I did, where you finger tighten them and then put pressure on them and tighten them again, it's going to be pretty well even unless something's seriously wrong with that head.
I don't know if anybody noticed when he did that and then he kind of hit the drum without even touching the key to it. It sounded like a drum already.
Yeah. Yeah.